Hey, welcome back to another episode of Reminisce. It has been far too long since I've uploaded something. It's been about a month. It's actually been over a month now. You can thank life for that. I had some minor health issues, aka I got sick for a while, and then family visited, so I didn't have time to record anything. But now I am back in full force to talk about the first episode of Kamen Rider Zi-O. It just aired the time I record this, I think about a week ago. A little over a week. Episode 2 aired the other day, and as soon as I finish recording this, the subs for episode 2 are going to drop, and I will probably make another video on that episode if I have things to say about it. Like with Build, I don't think I'm going to be doing videos on every episode, because I'm probably not going to have a lot to say with every episode, although that could change considering Zi-O's whole thing as an anniversary season and doing throwbacks to old Rider shows. We'll see how that plays out. For now, I just wanted to do a first impressions based on the premiere episode. I was going to do one for Ultraman Rube, which I obviously didn't do, and I was going to do one for Lupin vs. Pato when that started airing in February, and I still haven't even talked about that show at all. So this time I actually wanted to follow up on it, which I'm doing because you're hearing this now. So the general idea behind the series is that it's the last Heisei, full Heisei era show of Kamen Rider. Technically, it'll be going into whatever the new era is, considering the Emperor abdicates in April. But it's gonna be it's the last one to premiere in the Heisei era, so they're going out with a bang, and it's going to be this whole celebration of Heisei Rider over all the Rider shows over the last 20 years. Sort of like how Decade was a celebration of the previous 10 years of Heisei, but this is the last 20. Unlike Decade, it seems like though they're planning an actual full series with an actual storyline, so it'll probably turn out better than Decade. I hope it will at the end of the day anyway. And it at least seems like it'll actually have a storyline of some kind. Main character is Tokiwa Sogo. He is 18 years old, late in high school, and has a dream of becoming a king. This dream, he just sort of expects to fall into his lap, and he's really essentially pushing away a lot of the things he probably needs to keep up on in life. His grandfather keeps asking him about his college applications, which he's not doing. I don't remember him actively seeming to look or care for finding a job. So he's just sort of waiting for this thing to fall into his lap. I've been there. He is greeted by a girl from the year 2068 named Tsukiyomi, who tells him that in the future he becomes an evil demon king who essentially has subjugated the entire world and makes everything miserable for everybody. Sogo kind of sees some good in this because he's like, well, I'm a king, and he decides that he'll be a well-liked overlord, so he'll become this, I guess, dictator, but he wants to be a good guy, so it's weird. He's like, I'm pretty much okay with that, except for the part where I'm evil, but you know, we can work around that. But another guy from the future, I can never remember his last name, so I'm just gonna call him Gates because that's his name. He also has come back to deal with Sogo, but in a more direct route. He basically just wants to kill him, or at least that's what they really heavily implied in the little bit that he was in the first episode. We know he's going to be the secondary. Like, we've known that since before the show aired. So at some point he'll just be like, all right, well, we'll just stop you from being evil. At the same time, you have other villains from the future named Timejackers who are going back to the years of previous Rider shows. In the case of these first 2 episodes, or just the first episode in this case, but it flows into the second one. One of the Timejackers named Wool has gone back to 2017, the year of Kamen Rider Build. Using, I believe it's essentially the essences of the Riders, or the Timejackers' own abilities, they're able to transform regular people into these monstrous versions of Riders called Another Riders. And they wreak havoc, and it is Sogo's job as Zi-O to essentially stop them and gain the powers of the other Riders using these things called Ride Watches. As the first episode winds down, Sogo just has the Zi-O Ride Watch to become Zi-O and the Bike Ride Watch, so he can actually use his bike, and the Time Majin, which is a giant robot that helps him travel through time. Gates, right off the bat, has his own Gates Ride Watch and the Ghost Ride Watch, giving him the ability to use Kamen Rider Ghost's powers. Yeah, a lot of the first episode is sort of initially like introducing the whole time travel concept. They go back to the prehistoric age. Sogo almost gets eaten by a T-Rex that sounds like an elephant. And they go back to the Edo period so Toei can get more money out of that set. And finally they end up in the year 2017 to meet up with Kiryu Sento and Banjo Ryuga, the main characters of Kamen Rider Build. Although One thing that I want to point out about them going back to the year of Build, there are some inconsistencies with how Build ended. Spoilers if you haven't seen the rest of Build. Build ended with Sento essentially pulling his Earth, which was sat in its own parallel dimension from the other Kamen Rider shows, into the main universe. However, and that resulted in, the Skywall, which was the thing that had confirmed 100% that Build was in its own universe, because it had split Japan into three pieces, and that would have been a pretty big deal to mention in other Rider shows. That didn't exist in the new world that had been created at the end of the show. However, the 2017 that Zi-O goes back to in this episode has the Skywall. So, they've either already retconned the ending of Build to the point where I guess they got rid of the Skywall by the end of Build, because this is pretty early in Build. Like, the base Cross suit is still around, not Cross Charge or Cross Magma, and I think Build didn't even have Sparkling. I think it was just Build. I could be wrong. So it's pretty early in the show. It's not really something that entirely messes stuff up, but it is just a thing that I noticed a little inconsistency with Build. But continuity with Rider has always been a mess anyway, so whatever. Now, if I'm real, I was not hugely impressed by this first episode. I want to, like, right off the bat, I want to say that I am all in for Zi-O. I like its concept. I like the suits. The suits are fantastic. I like its theme song. I like that they're bringing back old Riders proper, unlike Decade, where they used a lot of alternate universe versions of them. But this first episode was very quick. Now, every Rider show that I can think of since Double has had a pretty fast-paced first episode, but Zi-O's is fast-paced to the point where it felt like they didn't really get a chance to actually say everything that was important. It feels like there's little bits and pieces of the plot for the first episode missing. I feel like a lot of that will be filled in by the second episode, but as it stands, I feel like this episode moved way too quick for its own good, and it didn't really give the audience the time to settle into what was going on. Sogo himself doesn't immediately come off as a great main character. He's not Takeru from Ghost Levels yet. He's not awful, but he's just kind of meh. I've seen people complain about his whole expect this king thing to fall into his lap. Me personally, I feel like that's kind of the point, is that he needs to learn to grow out of that things aren't just going to be handed to him like that. But that is very much a part of his personality, that he's not actively trying to do much of anything, and he seems very much okay with becoming an evil overlord, even if his whole point is that he wants to be an overlord who is loved rather than feared, like the Demon King Zi-O is. It's not been a bad first episode, but it really is one of the weaker ones of Heisei Phase 2, probably of Heisei in general, if I'm totally real with you. I think it introduces its concept fairly well. It gets across the basic idea of how the format of the show is going to go, especially once the second episode airs and we have the build arc wrapped up. But as far as really, I think, pulling in people who weren't in from the get-go, like me, just the Legend Rider thing, regardless of whether or not I was going to like the show, I was all in anyway, because I like the Legend Rider gimmick, and bringing back old Riders is just an easy way to warm into my heart. But if you were somebody who wasn't necessarily in on the Legend Rider thing, like if this was your first Rider show, I think this first episode wouldn't do a whole lot of really grabbing you. So it's just kind of, if you ask me, it's kind of a meh first episode. A lot of things that I liked, but there's a lot wrong with it, mainly just how quickly it moves through everything. Tsukiyomi and Gates and the Time Jackers just sort of show up, and there's not really a lot of explanation given to much of anything. And I imagine there's clearly supposed to be some mystery to the Time Jackers and everything, so I'm less bothered by that. But everything else just seemed very much, okay, now here it is, without much explanation or fanfare. We'll probably get more from the second episode and onwards, but just gauging on the first episode, it's not awful, but it's a pretty lackluster introductory episode. And I could see a lot of people, especially if they were just getting in now, sort of getting turned off right at the beginning. That is about going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed, then you can subscribe and hit that bell notification, and hopefully YouTube will tell you when I've uploaded a new video. They probably won't, though, so if you really want to know when I upload new stuff, I always post on Twitter when something new has gone up, and my most recent video is always my pinned tweet. I've been trying to be more active on Twitter in general, just tweeting about just random stuff, not necessarily like games that I'm playing, though I have been doing a lot of that, or stuff that I'm watching or reading. So if you just want to hear me talk about random shit and get a bit of a preview of the videos I'm going to be doing, because a lot of the times I'll tweet about a thing, and then after I've tweeted about it, I'll make a video on it. So if you want a sneak peek at that, then you can follow me on there. That's linked in the description, as is my Patreon, which right now is just a tip jar, but I probably need to revamp to make a proper Patreon page. For now, though, it's basically just there for if you enjoy my stuff and want to throw a couple of bucks my way. And if you want to check out some of the other stuff that I've done, then on screen right now are 2 of my previous videos. On the left, you had the last Rubber Suit Reminisce that I did, which was on the completely bizarre Bukyo Sentai Buddha Man, and on the right, you have the previous Tokusatsu 101 I did, which was on fan subgroups. That's all for now, and I will see you guys next time.